Well, good morning. It's good to see you guys here this morning. My name is Jim, as Chris said. I get to be on staff here. One of my favorite roles I get to do is lead our student ministry. You don't see some of their faces now, but the second service will be packed with them. If you don't see them, it's because a lot of them are in our kids' ministry, serving and leading small groups. If you see a teenager, we just walk by and pat them on the back, tell them they're doing a good job. They love this church and love being here and being a part of this. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a disturbing question, and I know what some of you are thinking. I didn't come to church to be disturbed, but it's Halloween week, and everything's kind of scary and disturbing, so maybe some disturbing is good for us. Here's the disturbing question. The easiest person, or it's really not a question, it's a statement. The easiest person to deceive is always the person in the mirror. You ever notice that? I mean, when it comes to deceiving me, if I'm being honest, I'm the best. And when it comes to deceiving you, you're actually the best. But the truth is, we kind of talk ourselves into into a lot of things. We kind of deceive ourselves into buying things and doing things. When it comes down to it, all of our greatest regrets in life, we are kind of the common denominator to all of them. The easiest person to deceive is always us. And in most cases, this is not just me, this is for you, this is for everyone. When it comes to our greatest regrets, we've kind of masterminded all of them, haven't we? I mean, we're the ones who have thought this stuff up. There may have been other people in the periphery, other people kind of leaning into it, maybe some people adding pressure to it. But at the end of the day, it was us who decided to do it. Because every action, whether there's outside pressure or outside voices, someone had to make that decision, and that person at the end of that is us. It's almost like there's this salesperson living in our head that sounds a lot like us. Have you ever noticed that? And they can convince us to do some really stupid things, to buy some really stupid things. And the sales pitches we convince ourselves of, they're really quite stupid and immature. Sometimes we buy things and we even tell ourselves, well, if I don't like it, I'll just go home and donate it. But imagine you're at a store and the salesperson comes up to you and tells you that. Well, if you don't like it, just buy it here and donate it if you don't like it. We would be offended, like, no, I'm not spending my money on this. But we convince ourselves of this. We actually convince ourselves, I'll buy this, but I'm just not going to tell her about it because I don't want her to know that I spent that much money on things. But if the sales associate convinced you, would he ever be able, rather, to convince you to buy it with that tagline? Well, you can buy it. You just don't have to tell her about it. But there's this sales thing going on in our head. There's this person back there that's convincing us, deceiving us, putting pressure on us to do things we often don't want to do. So what do we do about that? We're in a series called You'll Be Glad You Did. It's timeless advice for troubled times. This series isn't a series about rules. This is a series that's like kind of an advice series. It kind of sits in between the rules. And the idea for this series is that all of us have lived long enough to live a life where we've made some really good decisions, but we've also made some really bad decisions. We've lived long enough to experience the good of the good decisions, but we've also lived long enough to experience the consequences of the bad decisions. Some of us have lived a life where we can get to a place where you say, man, I'm so glad I did. But some of us have also lived a life where we end up telling stories where, man, I really wish I hadn't. How do we make sure we're not this person? That's what this series is about. It kind of sits in between the rules, but if you would listen to the advice, it will keep you from breaking the rules that will eventually break your heart or break your relationships or break your life. At the end of your life, when you tell your story, you can be glad you did. This series is based on the idea of wisdom. And wisdom is just this. Here's kind of our working definition for wisdom. Insights informed that the knowledge that all of life is connected. It's this idea that what I do today affects my tomorrow. And what I'm living in today is because of what happened yesterday. That every decision I make, it affects my future. It affects my reality. I don't make decisions in isolation or in a vacuum, that everything I do affects my future, that all of life is connected. The decisions I'm going to make tomorrow will affect my future. The decisions I'm making right now affect my reality. My today shapes my tomorrow. So what tomorrow do I want to live with? That's the idea of You'll Be Glad You Did. Today's unoriginal You'll Be Glad You Did advice is this. It's tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth, or more specifically, tell yourself the truth about you. Tell yourself the truth about why you don't do the things you want to do. Tell yourself the truth about why you're doing the things you don't think you should be doing. Tell yourself the truth about why you go there and why you do that and why you take that call all the time and why you continue to say that thing that you say all the time. Tell yourself the truth about you. Why you keep going back there. Why you keep doing the same thing. And here's why this is such a big deal. I've been teaching my kids this since they were old enough to kind of comprehend my words. Is that because we don't want to lie? Because every time we lie, we kind of break the relationship with the people we're lying to. Since they were young enough to understand my words, that's what I taught them. When you lie, you break the relationship. We have 3 rules in our house. One of them is we don't lie because lying separates the relationship. It severs it. It kind of builds something between the 2 people. So when we lie to others, we're building this wall between us. We're separating the relationship. We kind of become at odds with the people we're lying to, even if they don't know that we've lied to them. There's something there between us now because we chose to lie. So if we lie to others and it kind of separates the relationship with other people, what happens when we lie to ourselves? Well, then we become at odds with ourselves. And I know that sounds really weird, but it's true. That you can be at odds with you. You can be at odds with other people. And they might not even be able to recognize that you're at odds with them. You might not even be able to recognize in this moment that you're at odds with you. When somebody's trying to lie to themselves, we call this an excuse, don't we? We ask them, why didn't you finish? And then they come up with their go-to answer, and as they give the answer, you kind of nod your head, and inside you're saying, that's not really the answer, but I'm going to nod my head and say yes. Don't we do that? We know that's not the truth. We know that's not the real answer, but they've kind of convinced themselves of it, and we know sitting back, that's not the real reason. So we're going to nod along with it, unless it's like family or somebody we're really close with, and we don't mind having that uncomfortable conversation. They've convinced themselves of a lie. They make excuses. Why do we do that? Why do we do that with other people? But a better question for this morning is, why do we do that to ourselves? I'm going to make you a promise, and this is a big promise. And I don't know all of your circumstances, but I know this could be true for you because it's also very true for me. That when you decide to be completely ruthlessly honest with yourself, when you decide to stop pretending, to stop lying, to stop giving yourself the go-to answer that you give yourself all the time, when you decide to be completely ruthlessly honest with yourself, what you're left with at the end isn't this pretend you, it isn't this kind of displaced you, this diluted you. What you end up at the end with is actually you. And when you look back on the person you were, you realize, I can't believe that's who I was. In just a short period of time, when you decide to be completely ruthlessly, it's hard to say, completely ruthlessly honest with yourself, in just a short period of time, you'll look back and you won't even recognize the person you were. You might be ashamed of the person you were because you've been lying to yourself. You've built a wall. You're at odds with yourself. What I find really interesting is that everyone around us knows when we're not being honest with ourselves. They know when we're lying. Gentlemen, I don't know about you, but I know this with my wife. She has this ability every time I've kind of deceived myself into thinking something or lying to myself. She knows when I'm off. She just leans in and says, Jim, what's happening? You're not really you. That's not the you that you're supposed to be. This is the pretend you that you're showing me. So what would it look like if we just decided in this moment to tell ourselves the truth, to be honest with ourselves? I don't have to convince you of this. You're all adults, but this feels like common sense, doesn't it? Of course we shouldn't do that. Of course if I lie, it puts me at odds with other people. It hurts my relationship. Of course I wouldn't do that. Yet we lie to ourselves all the time because it's really hard to stop lying to ourselves. I won't lie to other people, but I don't have a problem lying to myself because we're all natural born liars. You don't ever have to convince a child how to lie. Have you noticed that, parents? Any of you who have kids? No one wakes their son up in the morning and says, now, son, I have to teach you a really important life lesson. I want you to gather around. I want you to pay attention because this is a life skill you need to develop. I'm going to teach you how to lie, said no parent ever, right? Because you don't have to. It's ingrained in them. There's something that at a really young, early age, we learn how to lie, and then we really, at a young, early age, learn how to lie to ourselves. There's something about us that just leans in this way. I can remember the first lie I ever told. It was in my dad's brown Chevy Caprice station wagon. You guys remember these station wagons? Some of you might not remember it. I might be dating myself a little bit, but they had the two seats, then they had the row of seats in the back, the third row of seats. What did you guys call the third row of seats in this station wagon? We called it the way back. It wasn't like you were in the back. You were like in the way back. It was the third row of seats that faced the other way. They were the nausea-inducing seats that I don't know how that ever passed any regulations or code. We had one of these growing up, and I remember I was still really young. I was supposed to be sitting in my seat, but I was in the way back, and my dad was pulling out of a parking lot. I think it was on a Sunday morning leaving church. And I know he could see me in the rearview mirror, but he still asked the question, Jim, are you sitting in your seat? No, I was playing in the way back where I wasn't supposed to be. But without missing a beat, without thinking about it, I'm like, yup. And then as sneaky and as stealthy and as quietly as I could, I climbed over the seat and I sat in and I buckled myself in. And I don't know if that was actually the first lie I ever told. It's the first lie I ever remember telling, because the entire trip home, I sat with this pit in my stomach. I can't believe I just lied to my hero, to my dad. You know what's amazing about that? No one had to teach me how to do that. It was just in me. No one had to teach me, Jim, this is how you lie to get out of the trouble you're going to get in when your dad finds out you're not sitting in your seat and buckled. I just knew. And it's not just kids. Adults, we're the same way, aren't we? You know, there's research that is out there that shows why men and women tell lies. And women, you come out looking a lot better than men. That's probably not surprising. Here's the number one reason women tell lies. Women tell lies to avoid hurting other people's feelings. I know when you hear that, you're probably thinking, oh, that's true. Men, we tell lies to impress. Shocker. It's the truth. There's something in us from a young age that is there to lie. And I don't know why it's there, but it is. Now, this isn't a good excuse, and this isn't a reason we should ever do this, but like there is a part of me that understands why we lie. Right? We should never lie. It's like the number two rule in our household, never lie. We shouldn't do that, but at least when we're lying to other people, there's a part of me that understands the rationale. There's a part of me that understands why we would do that. Right? There's a part of me that understands there's just like this short-term benefit to telling a lie. But why would we ever lie to ourselves? You know, there are three things that we tend to lie about. There's three buckets that all of our lies kind of fall into. The first one that we tend to lie about is this. We lie to avoid. We lie to avoid shame. We lie to avoid rejection. We lie to avoid pain or embarrassment. We lie to avoid. The second bucket is this. We lie to protect. We lie to protect our reputation. I heard someone make this connection once, and I thought this was so interesting. As humans, as people, we care so much about our reputation that we will lie to protect the reputation that we're an honest person. Like, how does that make any sense? But this is what we convince ourselves of. I just have to lie to protect myself. I care so much about what you think about my reputation of being an honest person, I'm willing to lie for it. We lie to protect our reputation. We lie to protect other people's feelings. We lie to protect our income. We lie to protect what we've earned. We lie to protect. And then the final one is we lie to win. I want to win at life. I want to win at the competition. I want to win admiration. I want to win respect. All of our lives kind of flow into these buckets. And while it makes sense on the outside as to why we would lie, because we want to avoid the shame, or we want to protect a reputation, or we want to win someone's respect, while that makes sense on the outside, why do we lie to ourselves on the inside? Why do we continue to deceive ourselves? What's really interesting is they're the same reasons. We lie to avoid. I don't want to feel the pain. I don't want to feel the shame. I don't want to feel this thing on the inside. I'm going to lie to avoid that, because if I face it, that means I have to change. And I don't want to change. We lie to protect. I need to protect myself from what other people perhaps are thinking about me. I need to protect myself from the embarrassment. So I'm going to lie to myself. I'm going to deceive myself. I'm going to kind of hide myself in. And it's what's interesting, can you see this? As you lie, it's almost like you begin to deceive yourself and hide away from the truth that's out there about you. But I don't want to face the truth about me, so I'm going to lie to protect myself. And I'm going to lie rather than face the truth that makes me feel a little bit more like a loser than an actual winner. The bottom line is we lie to ourselves to feel better about ourselves. And after all, who could blame us? We want to feel good about ourselves, don't we? I mean, parents, we teach this to our kids over and over again. We want them to feel good about themselves. We want them to feel good about who they are. But it's not good to lie in order to get there. Lying to feel good about ourselves keeps us from facing the part of ourselves that we actually need to deal with. We're going to look at an important character in the history of ancient Israel. The guy's name is King Saul. He was actually chosen to be the first king of Israel. He came to power after this kind of bloody, tumultuous time in Israel's history. Israel had really no real leader. They were led by these tribal chieftains called judges. There's actually a book in the Bible called Judges that talks about all their exploits. It's really interesting. But over the course of the judges leading, there was kind of this lack of centralized government. There was a lack of really good leadership. There was kind of this moral decay that the nation of Israel was on. And the people were crying out for a king. They wanted a savior. They wanted someone who could kind of erase the nation's checkered past and bring forward the nation of Israel that they thought they were. They demanded a king. And God sent them Saul. Through the prophet Samuel went and he found Saul and he anointed Saul to be king. What's amazing is that Saul wasn't a really good king. But when he came on the scene, he was a good person. There was all this humility. When Samuel chose Saul to be king, Saul kind of didn't understand what was happening. He said, Samuel, why would you choose me? I come from the lowest of the clans of Benjamin, and my family is the most insignificant family in the entire clan. Why would you choose me? I mean, if you're picking your own leader, isn't that a guy you want leading you? I mean, there's all this expressed humility, like he's going to be a good guy. He's going to care about us. He's going to build this nation up. The story gets better when Samuel goes to present Saul to the nation of Israel as their king. He can't find Saul because Saul's hiding in the luggage. There was all this fear about stepping into this thing and leading this nation. There was this humility. But how does Saul go from all of this humility and then in 5 chapters to becoming so arrogant that he believes he is the answer to all of Israel's problems, not God? Saul had a major character flaw. And much like we've been talking about this morning, it was self-deception. There was this thing inside Saul that convinced himself to believe that somewhere along the line it wasn't God who appointed him. It was of his doing. Self-deception is this. I love this definition. It's the human heart's seemingly infinite capacity to know something at one level while keeping ourselves from really knowing it at a deeper level. Because we choose not to. It's there, and we know it's there, but we're just not going to dive into it at a deeper level. We're not going to really try to understand it. And so we deceive ourselves. Everyone struggles with this. And if you know you struggle with this, chances are the problem is bigger than you think it is. And if you don't think you struggle with this, well, you just proved my point. Saul thinks he knows better than anyone else, including God. And the biggest tragedy about this is he's not even aware of it. As the story progresses, his mistakes continue to get bigger. The stakes continue to get higher. Somehow he's never able to see his mistake unless somebody points it out to him. And then in 1 Samuel 15, this is where our story picks up. God positions Saul and he gives him the instructions to go out and destroy the Amalekites, to completely destroy this army. And I know in 21st century thinking, we think, well, God is love. Why would God command Saul to do this? But this nation of Amalek, these were evil people, like truly evil people. They tried to destroy Israel when Israel was escaping from Egypt earlier in their history. And this nation of Amalek, they were like a nation that was founded on genocide and infanticide and ritualistic sacrifices. I mean, they were just evil people. And they didn't just perform these evil acts. They celebrated these evil acts. And it's almost as if God's telling Saul and the nation of Israel, this kind of evil is a blight on creation. And you need to get rid of it. You need to erase it. I don't want you to become anything like it. So I want you to completely destroy the army and everything they have. Saul faces the battle and he goes out, but he allows his soldiers to plunder some of the riches, some of the spoils, and he brings it back. And it doesn't seem that such a major offense to us, but to God it was an offense because what it represented to God was this evil nation. And all evil nations rape, pillage, plunder. But not the nation of Israel in God's eyes, not you. You'll be different. You'll be a nation set apart. You're not going to be like all the other nations. And in this one act, Saul's saying, no, this is who I want to be. This is who I want our nation to become. And God's seeing it as a step in the direction of becoming like the nation of Amalek. So God sends Samuel, the prophet who was sent to anoint Saul as king. And Amalek shows up on the scene, and here's the conversation that these two gentlemen have. When Samuel shows up, when Samuel reached him, Saul said, "The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." But Samuel said, "Well, then what's this bleating of sheep in my ears? What's this lowing of cattle that I hear?" I mean, can you sense Samuel's sarcasm? Saul's like, "I did it. I destroyed everything. What's that thing I hear? That. That." And Saul, like anyone caught in the act, he begins to try to convince Samuel of the lie that he's already convinced himself of. Saul responds, "Well, the soldiers did this. They brought them back from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and the cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God." But, I mean, it almost sounds like a little kid making excuses, doesn't it? "But we totally destroyed the rest." I didn't even add that. That's literally Saul's words. We totally did it, Samuel. Really? Really? Samuel calls him out on it. He sees Saul's excuses. He sees that Saul's begun to deceive himself and believe a lie. "Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord?" Saul still can't see his mistake. It's like he didn't know he was breaking God's commands. It's like he really didn't understand. He's beginning to play games with Samuel. He's beginning to blame shift a little bit. But Samuel, it was the soldiers who took the sheep. And they took the cattle, and the best of the sheep and the cattle, and they devoted these to God in order that we might sacrifice it. And I always love this little bar throws in here. "To the Lord your God." You know, Samuel, the Lord God that you keep talking about, not really the Lord our God or the Lord my God, but the Lord your God. They took the sheep, they took the plunder, they took it all so we could dedicate it and devote it to the Lord your God. He's so self-deceived. Samuel's not buying it. Samuel replies, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice." You probably have heard that phrase before. This is where it originated. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. And it's only after this confrontation that Saul begins to feel a little remorse, and he finally comes clean on his remorse. Saul then says to Samuel, "I have sinned, but please honor me before the elders and my people and before Israel. Come back with me so that I might worship the Lord your God." And once again, we see the true reason for Saul's remorse. It's not about God, and it's not about being truthful. It's not about being the best that God has created me to be. Samuel, I'm just concerned about what everyone else thinks. Will you come back with me? Will you present me again to the elders and the nation of Israel so that I can look good? I'll even go through with this sacrifice and the worship. It's almost as if Saul's saying, "Samuel, what I really care about is what everyone else thinks about me. Not what God thinks about me, not even what I think about me, but what God thinks or what they think about me." Saul's story doesn't end well. If 1 Samuel is kind of devoted as this character study on Saul coming into this position, the rest of Samuel is devoted to show the moral and the spiritual decay of Saul. Until eventually he is so self-deceived himself that the nation of Israel is actually robbed from him and given to someone else. Saul's deception was so bad. He had deceived himself and he had suppressed the truth. He became someone he never intended to be, and he did things he never intended to do. So what if Saul just stopped lying to himself and told himself the truth? What if we could learn from Saul's story and just stop lying to ourselves and tell ourselves the truth? You see, self-deception is not the worst thing you'll ever do, but it will lead to the worst thing that you'll ever do. There's a story from World War II about the end of the war. The Allied forces were driving back the Nazis, and they came across this town in Germany. It was the first town with the concentration camp, called the town of Ordorf. The Allied troops got there before the Nazis could hide all of the remnants and all the evidence of what was happening there. And as they walked into the town, there were mass graves with hundreds of dead bodies. It's too horrific to even describe. It was so bad that General Patton, when he came on the scene, he immediately vomited because he was just overwhelmed with what he was seeing. So moved by the tragedy, he then went and found the mayor and his wife in the town and all the able-bodied men, and he drugged them out to see what was happening. And he made them dig mass graves so that they could hold a funeral service for every person who had died. At the end of the funeral, he went to find the mayor and his wife who had hung themselves in their house. And they left a note that said, "We didn't know, but we knew. We didn't know, but we knew. They had suppressed the truth. And suppression isn't the same as ignorance. Suppression means the truth is there, but we're going to keep ourselves from acknowledging it. It's like taking that beach ball and trying to push it down in the pool water. You know what I mean? And it keeps trying to fight to come up, and you're struggling to keep it under. It's the same way with the truth. It wants to come up, but we're fighting to keep it down. Timothy Keller said it this way. I love this phrase. He says, "We know, but we don't know because we don't want to know. It's easier for me to just turn a blind eye and pretend it doesn't even happen. Pretend it's not even there." Like the mayor of Orduf, the truth was too uncomfortable and would demand too much change. So subconsciously, they choose not to know. This is what led to Saul's change from a man of humility to a man of pride. It's what caused his story to unravel and the nation of Israel to be ripped from him. And if we're not careful, it's what will spell our own destruction. If we continue to follow the path of deceiving ourselves and convincing ourselves of a lie that deep inside we know it's there, we know it's not true, but it's just so much easier to not deal with it. How often do we do the same things Paul does? We justify our poor decisions. We try to negotiate with God. We lie to ourselves to avoid embarrassment, to protect our reputation, to win. If we're not careful, just like Saul, the same thing might happen. So tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth, even if the truth makes you feel bad about yourself. And I know like culture tells us, but the worst thing you could do is feel bad about yourself. No, the worst thing you could do is tell yourself a lie that allows you to continue to hold on to a lie that makes you feel bad about yourself. There are worse things than feeling bad about yourself. But when we deceive ourselves, we're actually holding on to the things that we need to release to actually feel better about ourselves, to deal with, so that we can be exactly who God created us to be. And that's what happens when we begin to tell ourselves the truth. We begin to deal with the uncomfortable parts, the lies that we've convinced ourselves of, the things that we've hidden to protect our reputation. And although it's uncomfortable and although it's embarrassing, although there comes a little bit of shame, the thing we have to ask is, what are we actually afraid of? Because the only person who feels the shame is you. The only person who feels the embarrassment is you. So what if we just for a moment decided to be honest with ourselves and tell ourselves the truth? As uncomfortable as it might be. Because on the other side of this, Jesus told us there's freedom. In John 8:32, he said this, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Don't hold on to the lie. Don't hold on to the things that are deluding you, that are dividing you, that are putting you at odds with yourself. Tell yourself the truth. Because you can't become fully you and fully alive if you're hiding, if you're deceiving. So what if today the invitation was just quit hiding? Just come out of hiding and be truthful with yourself. The application to the message today isn't to become a Christian. It's actually an invitation. And it's an invitation to come out of hiding and to be honest. Because it's in that moment of honesty where you confront the lies that you've convinced yourself of, where you confront the pieces of you that you'd rather hide. It's in that moment that you're honest with yourself, that you're also honest with your Heavenly Father. And that the lies go away and forgiveness is extended. And do you know what you get at the end of this journey, at the end of finally wrapping my head around the lies that I've told myself, the lies that I've convinced myself of? At the end of all of that, do you know what you're left with? You're left with the real you. Not the fake you, not the deluded you, not the you that's been deceived, not the you that's in hiding. The real you. The you that God created you to be. The you that the people around you are longing for. The you that maybe your husband or wife knew was there, but for years there's been this wall, this wedge. The you that your kids know is there, but they've never got to experience it because you've convinced yourself of lies and you told lies and you fractured the relationship. But if you'd be willing to be honest, at the end of it, you get you. And if you think about this, I'm going to ask you some questions in just a moment. But think about this. If God accepts you without having to lie to himself about you, Or let me say it another way. If God accepts you without having to like say to himself, I can't really look at you. I love you, but I can't look at you because of all your shame and all your guilt and all your motives and all the lies you've told yourself of. If God can look at you with full love and accept you the way you are, then who are you to lie to yourself about you? If God can look at you with all of the lies, with all of the motives, with all of the selfishness and the deception and say, I love you the way you are, but I love you too much to leave you that way. Who are you to continue to lie to yourself? If your sin, if your past, if your failure, if your inconsistency doesn't cause God to look away, it shouldn't cause you either. So what if you just told yourself the truth? What if in this moment you decided to be honest? I'm going to close with a series of questions, and I got to prep you up front. These questions are going to be a little bit uncomfortable, and in this moment, you might be tempted to continue to tell the lie. And here's what I want to ask you. As we go through these questions, if one of them kind of pricks your conscience just a little bit, if one of them kind of lights up in your mind, don't lie. You don't got to shout it out. You're not going to write a note and tell somebody else. You don't have to tell your spouse. This is between you and God. Don't go back to the default lie that you've told yourself like 100 times. In this moment, would you just be ruthlessly, completely honest with yourself? Some of these questions might be irrelevant to you, but some of it might just hit home. Here's the first one. What are you avoiding? Why are you avoiding him? Why are you avoiding her? Why are you avoiding that conversation? Why are you avoiding that thing? Let me ask this one another way. What are you putting off? Why are you putting that off? Why are you putting off having that conversation? Why are you putting off sitting down and doing the work of being honest with yourself? Why do you keep putting that thing off? Here's an uncomfortable question. Who do you get dressed for in the morning? Like as you're getting dressed and as you're putting your clothes, who is in your mind? Why did you move in? I mean, really, like, why did you move? Well, it saves us. I know that's like the token answer, but like, really ask yourself, really in this moment, it's between you and God. Don't go to your default answer. Why did you really move in? Why are you leaving? Why did you move out? Why, we just can't get along. She's just so, and he's just so frustrated. I mean, really though, not the answer you give everyone else when they ask these questions, because they ask you. In this moment between you and God, why are you moving out? Why won't you get help? I don't like asking for help. I know, but everyone around you knows you need it, and they're pleading, would you just go get some help? Why won't you get help? Why won't you go see a counselor? I don't like counselors. I don't have money. We know all those excuses, but you have money to do the things you want to do when you want to do them. Why won't you get help? Why won't you go see a counselor? Why won't you sit with somebody who can help you? Ladies, students, why do you keep going out with him? I mean, you know he's not right for you. Your mom knows he's not right for you. Your friends know he's not right for you. He knows he's not right for you. Like, why do you keep going out with him? Gentlemen, why do you keep going out with her? Well, you know, I mean, you don't have to tell me. Why do you keep going out with her? Why did you really file for divorce? Like, really, not the answer you give everyone else. And I know this is uncomfortable and it's embarrassing, and it might go back like 10 years to a really uncomfortable moment for you where it was a really bad season. But this is just between you, and your Heavenly Father. Why did you file for divorce? Really? I mean, if these lies that we build walls between the people we care about the most, and you want to be deeply intimate with someone else, won't you just be honest in this moment and tell yourself the truth? Why did you file for divorce? Why are you taking that job? Or maybe, why are you quitting that job? How about this one? What's the real reason you don't call your kids? What's the real reason you don't call your mom or you don't call your dad? What's the real reason you're avoiding the call from your brothers and your sisters? Well, you don't know my background. You don't know what I had to grow up with. I mean, there's that thing that happened at Christmas, or the thing that happened at Thanksgiving that could happen at this Thanksgiving because it's coming up. Like there's just that thing. I know. But what's the real reason? And I know if you were just to tell your story, like everyone around you would be like, yeah, if that happened to me, I wouldn't call them either. But have you sat down? Have you done the work? Have you wrestled that to the ground? Why won't you tell her the truth about what's going on? I mean, really. Well, I don't know what she'll say. I'm worried about what why won't you tell him the truth about what's going on? Why won't you go back to school and finish? I mean, you don't have to go back. No one's making you go back, but have you sat down to wrestle with why I won't go back, why I won't finish, why I won't finish the thing I started? Why won't you go back and finish? Ultimately, what are you afraid of? Some of you are thinking, Jim, I'm not afraid of anything. Well, you just admitted. You're afraid to admit that you're afraid of anything. What are you actually afraid of? And then maybe the most relevant question for this morning is, who is this guy speaking? I came to hear Chris. I know. You'll get him next week. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me getting to speak it. It's terrifying to think that I'd have to wrestle to the ground the truths that I've been hiding, the lies that I've been using to mask. And the truth is, everyone around you already knows. They may not know the truth, but they know you're not being honest. They know you've deceived yourself. They know, just like Samuel knew with Saul, that's not the real reason. I think you owe it to yourself this morning to be honest and to tell yourself the truth. This next part, there's no biblical evidence for this, but I wonder if in moments like this, God isn't sitting on the edge of his throne in heaven, looking down and saying, come on, you're so close. You're so close. Just come out of hiding. Just be honest with yourself. Just wrestle to the ground all of the lies and all of the things that you've deceived, all of the pieces that you've kind of hidden behind, the real you's back there. And that's what I want. So what if this morning, that's what you did? You just chose in this moment to come out of hiding, to be honest with yourself, to tell yourself the truth about you. I've asked the band to come up. They're going to take their positions in a moment. We're going to close with a song, but we're not going to close as we would normally close with a song. Instead of standing and singing with us this morning, I'm actually going to ask you to stay seated. If you know the words, you can sing, but here's what I would love for you to do in this moment. Just let the lyrics, let the words of the song kind of rest with you. Just have a quiet moment right now with you, and your Heavenly Father. And for those of you who are prone to want to get your kids and leave and get out of here and go get something to eat, I completely understand that. But this morning, I'm going to invite you to not do that and to sit with us in this moment, to stay and to hear the words. Perhaps nothing I said this morning struck a nerve with you, but maybe something in this song will. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, God, I know how challenging messages like this can be. God, I know what it felt like for me to wrestle with this all week. It is so easy to tell ourselves lies, to convince ourselves of something that isn't true. God, to protect, to avoid, to make sure at the end we're the winners. But God, in this moment, would you help, God, tear down those walls, tear down those preconceived ideas, those excuses we continue to tell ourselves. Would you help rip down the lies, God, so that at the end what we're left with is us. God, and in that moment, would you give us the freedom that Jesus provided? The promise he made that if the Son sets you free, you are indeed free. Would you give us the courage to face the lies we've told ourselves? God, and the wisdom to rip them down and to find the answers in you. In Jesus' name.